But when they do, where do you turn? We're the ones to call. On a broader sense, in terms of like what tools to buy and things like that, I think there's a good effort afoot, and folks at the AP actually, and at Quartz and elsewhere, are trying to pull together some of these resources so that we can say, hey, you know, this service is a really good one. Trint actually works really well. Like when they say they'll transcribe your video, that actually works. And here's their pricing model or whatever. So we're trying to pull together some guidelines because I think this is a real problem. The big organizations are already investing in it. The Wall Street Journal, Quartz, AP, those kinds. But we're actually really committed to helping smaller newsrooms, so get in touch.
So in terms of Knight, the way we've been funding is we're funding places like Quartz who could distribute those knowledge for free. So when John listed the website, that's actually under the grant agreement. The other way for small newsroom to get involved is actually identify projects that you could collaborate in. So for example, with the ICIJ project, that's a collaboration between ICIJ and John. And so if there's collaboration opportunity, that's also a great way to start sort of understanding how to apply these technology into your day-to-day journalism. Because once you do one or two projects, you get a better sense of sort of what your newsroom's needs are and how could you apply that particular technology. So I would say so in general, Knight mostly fund US-based nonprofits and projects, but the resources that we fund is meant for anyone to tap into that shared learning.
I don't have anything else to add.
So this question is for Lisa. Can you expand a little bit more in the model that you're using for the churn rate models that you use for subscribers?
I'm afraid I can't. That was a data scientist on the business side.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I mean, I can say in general, and not knowing, so I'll say, but the biggest issue here is collecting the data, right? What do you know about your subscribers? What do you know about what they have done on your site? Are you collecting every interaction that they have with you? Are they logged in? Do you know that they're there? And once you have a lot of that data, you can start to say, oh, this group of people, after a year, did not, or they renewed their subscription. This group of people did not. What was different? And that's where you can start doing that. Now, you could do that by hand, but at some point, it's going to get too complicated. And that's when machine learning can come in.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
This is my second question. Fake news. And, I would have thought this as a reader of media, and I used to be a producer of media working with Paul at AP a long time ago, that AI would help determine what is true and what is false. And yet the problem seems to have exploded. Fakes, deep fakes, audio fakes, video fakes, etc. So if you could talk just in general on that topic, what major media and what major technology and innovation people are doing to address this problem, and who's going to win? Are the bad guys, if I say it that way, going to evolve faster than the good guys' capacity to curtail that problem?
Yes. The bad guys will move faster than the good guys. It's just how it usually works. I think one thing I would say is that just as a rule, in terms of detecting fake news and sorting it, unlike the spam detectors that you may not know, but machine learning is working on your email account every day. It's your spam detector, right? You and Google and others have marked things as spam and not spam, and that trains the system to sort it out so you don't see very much spam. Being able to detect between fake news and real news turns out to be really, really hard. So in terms of machine learning and AI solving that problem of sorting it, I think that we have a long way to go. What I do think is that using machine learning, or using AI and generative models to create synthetic media, so people who don't exist, interviews that don't exist, text that wasn't that maybe was never existed, quotes that never existed. That's out there for sure. But in the same way, I have a lot of faith in our industry. People have been trying to trick us for centuries, right? With fake pictures, with all sorts of things. So we need to be better about understanding what those fake things look like. But in the same way that we will say, right now, you'll look at a video and you'll say online and say, did that happen today? Is that real? Can I find other examples? How do I do my reporting? In the end, it's just going to be about journalism, doing our journalism and looking at multiple sources and making sure that we can get at the truth. We may have to teach our journalists how not to get tricked, but that's always been the case.
So as part of the grant that we made earlier this year, we also made a grant to the Rochester Institute of Technology, where they're actually actively working on how to detect deep fakes. In fact, last year we did a summit at MIT where we convened journalists and as well as academic researchers really looking at this problem. So I would say this problem is not going to go away. It will never go away, but we just have to be really establish a processes and an understanding in terms of how are we dealing with misinformation and disinformation. So that's why we funded out of the grant Verificado, Chequeado in Argentina to precisely deal with that information, right? And then from a technical point of view, what IRT is doing is looking at the potential of a video being fake, or the potential of this audio being fake, because the technology is already out there. In China, Xinhua, they have a artificial newscaster, right? That person is not a real talent, is a simulation of a talent, and someone typed a script and then it used natural language processing to speak it, right? So that technology is already there. It could use for good, it could use for bad, but how do we as a community really start the dialogue of transparency, right? Just when the AP used automation to produce the story, they were very transparent about who wrote the story, right? There's no byline. It tells you that this is done through some kind of automation. So I think it's really important for us to sort of put some ethical guidelines on how are we applying these technology into our journalism in a way that's transparent for our audience.
Yeah, and that's like when it's a clear-cut example of automation, I think our organizations have been pretty good about saying, like, this is automation. But I think as we're starting to develop that sort of human-AI partnership, what that looks like as the next generation is going to be quite different too. So do we have to put a contributing line at the bottom saying, like, this article was supported by AI? Do we need to make clear what the machine learning algorithm was that found these documents? What do we do with that is something that I think we're all struggling with.
Ok. Una pregunta más.
Hi, two different questions. We are working and discussing with different international news agencies about the experience working with AI, machine learning, and almost everybody is working on the same fields, trying to improve newsroom management, trying to improve content, trying to look for early alerts, meta tagging, all these kind of things, that visual recognition, videos, photos, these kind of things. But everybody is feeling that in the way that you are working on the different parts of different development ways that you put on the table, you discover different things, and this changes the development process. I'm interested to know what is your experience about what is your development process. If you have very clearly goals at the beginning, we're going to try to get a better tool to improve subscription, or we're going to or in the process you are discovering different ways and you are changing your development process. And the second question is, how is your approach and how is your experience working between the newsrooms and the technical side, and how is the people reacting when you put new tools on top of them, when you manage different ways to do the things that maybe most of the reporters are doing in the traditional way. Where is your result? Specifically talking about the regular people in the newsroom, not the people that comes from the data fields, on the data journalism experience that maybe is closer to this kind of things.
To your first part, our goals were to get journalists to understand when machine learning could help them, as I showed with the emoji, actually help them, so work together in partnership to help work on their stories, and help teach them and everybody else about how they can do it themselves, given this example. So if we work with somebody on a particular project, an investigation, part of the agreement about working with them is that when we're all done, and this is all published, we're gonna write all about how we did it and share the code and share the steps so that others might learn from us. So we're still in the process of that. We've been pretty excited about the response. We have a lot of people interested in what we're doing. So I think that's been pretty successful, and we'll know for sure in a few months. On the second part, I'm pretty fortunate to be working at an organization that was founded partly by Wall Street Journal people in response to do something different than the Wall Street Journal. So, and part of that, I think the Wall Street Journal has probably come a long way since then, but I think also they crafted the organization so that the technical and product side is actually super closely aligned with the editorial side, and it services the business and the advertising and the membership as well. But it was really founded with the product side being a part of the editorial operation, which I think is really important. It means that there's not so much conflict between the technical people and the news gathering people. In fact, many of our reporters and journalists, and this is true at the Wall Street Journal and many organizations, are actually coders and technologists. So we have coders who we call journalists who may not ever write a story, right? But they are still journalists. And so I'm fortunate to work in an organization where that's not a boundary. I know that there are lots of places where the tech side and the editorial side don't talk as well, and I feel for them. But I think once people on the editorial side realize the power of some of this stuff, it becomes pretty natural. But you should talk about it too.
I would echo just that last part, that like once people see the power of the tools, they're on board. So we do have still some legacy systems, and obviously that can be difficult at times. But on the other side of that is it's like very obvious where there are like quick wins, right? And so we've talked to reporters, we've talked to editors, essentially doing like an ethnographic study of where some of those pain points are so that we can build specific tools to help them. Part of that is the communication back. So finding real problems and then working to fix them and then rolling them out. And I think, we're a proof of concept team. So actually I'm a relatively new hire to the R&D team. And partly that's because we need to figure out how to scale it across the entire newsroom and make these tools a lot more robust.
I would say it's no different than any other things that we have adopted in journalism. I mean, think about like how skeptical was photographers with Photoshop when it first introduced, right? Like, what do you mean I'm using this software and not being in the darkroom? Or like using Excel to crunch your data rather than manually, or even like using Word to spell check, right? I mean, all of those things, people were just skeptical when it first come out, but I mean, we don't question about using these technologies. So it's really about how you articulate the win-win situation between, you and the technology and the reporter, right? I think, at the end of the day, if I'm telling the reporter, say, look, you don't have to write a quarterly earnings story. Instead, you could do a deeper dive on this company. Which would they rather do? Like, I'd be surprised if a reporter just like, yes, I would like to write 10 earnings stories per day. Exactly the same story, different numbers, different company.
Creo que ya tiempo suficiente. Thank you so much. Very interesting. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, well done.